We are throwing out the usual agenda today and jumping straight into the deep end of a massive, pressing, generational debate. Welcome to The Explainer. We're going to be looking at raw data, academic research, and the actual lived experiences of people trying to navigate today's financial landscape. We're breaking down these complex economic shifts to see exactly how they impact you right now. So, let's dive in.
Just think about that question for a second. Is Gen Z entering adulthood in a structurally worse economy, or does every generation feel this way? This exact question was recently posted on a massive Reddit thread over in the r/Gen Z community. And man, it sparked an absolute firestorm of discussion. It perfectly captures this underlying anxiety that millions of young adults are feeling right now. They're looking at the housing market, they're looking at inflation, they're looking at their paychecks, and asking a totally valid question. Is the game actually harder now, or are we just going through the standard growing pains of entering the real world?
Section 1. A tougher economic starting line.
Okay, let's look at the exact words from the Reddit user who started this whole thing, the Real Sweater God. They wrote, "I'm genuinely trying to understand whether the economic starting conditions for adulthood have structurally changed over time, or if this is simply part of normal generational economic cycles. And honestly, this is such a thoughtful inquiry. They aren't just complaining, right? They're trying to figure out if the actual baseline of adulthood has fundamentally shifted. Have the rules of the game changed since their grandparents, or even their parents, first bought homes and started their careers?"
The discussion that followed highlighted a really fascinating distinction. It isn't just a competition about which generation had it worse overall. Older generations like Boomers and Gen X definitely faced sudden, severe historical hardships. Think about the Vietnam War drafts or those immediate, devastating job losses from the 2008 financial crash. But for Gen Z, the challenges are just different. They're facing prolonged structural pressures. We're talking about long-term housing shortages pushing prices way out of reach, massive student debt expansion, and wage growth that's just consistently lagging behind the skyrocketing cost of living. It's basically an acute shock versus a slow burn squeeze.
And here is where those historical shocks actually bleed into the present day. Listen to this powerful quote from another user, Odd Snail, whose Gen X parents lost their livelihood back in 2008. They said, "It wasn't just the economy being bad. It was also secondary issues from our parents having financial problems and them not being able to support a lot of us in the ways previous generations were able to." You see, the 2008 crash didn't just hurt the adults at the time, it cascaded across entire households. It caused long-term housing insecurity and completely stripped away those financial safety nets that previous generations usually relied on to help their kids launch into adulthood.
Section 2. The Buy Now Debt Trap.
So, we've established the subjective feeling of this prolonged economic squeeze. Now let's pivot and look at the objective data on exactly how people are coping with it. Take a second to really absorb this number. $700 billion. According to data from Empower, that is what the Buy Now, Pay Later, or BNPL, market is projected to hit by the year 2028. $700 billion. This isn't just some fringe payment method anymore. Splitting purchases into smaller short-term installments has exploded into a massive, undeniable economic force.
But who is actually driving this explosion? Well, there is a massive generational divide here. This phantom debt, as some economists are starting to call it, heavily skews toward younger demographics. We're seeing 48% of millennials and 40% of Gen Z reporting that they use Buy Now, Pay Later services, compared to just 28% of Gen X. In fact, more than half of all BNPL consumers are 35 years old or younger. They're leveraging this tool to manage those incredibly high costs of living we were just talking about.
But what exactly are they buying? Sure, 44% use it for electronics and 39% for apparel, but a truly startling 25% are now using BNPL just to buy everyday groceries. And the hidden risks here are severe. Over 30% of users admit they've completely lost track of what they owe. Nearly a quarter were late on a payment in 2024. And perhaps most dangerously, 66% of users are taking out multiple of these loans at the exact same time. It's incredibly easy to just click buy, but it's becoming an absolute juggling act to actually pay it all back.
And that brings us to a crucial point, the cost of the illusion of affordability. Research shows that 55% of Gen Z feels like BNPL helps them manage their finances, but the data tells a completely different story. Americans use BNPL statistically carry higher balances on their other unsecured debt. We're talking an average of $453 more in personal loans and $871 more in credit card debt than non-users. And get this, 38% admit BNPL makes shopping feel less financially real. It separates the pain of paying from the joy of buying, which is a seriously dangerous psychological trap when your budget is already stretched thin.
Section 3. The Financial Literacy Gap.
To really understand this gap, we're drawing on a rigorous secondary data analysis published in the International Journal of Creative Research Thoughts. This study dives deep into the direct correlation between financial education and personal wealth growth, using massive data sets from the World Bank and the OECD. So this isn't just theory, guys. It is proven macroeconomic data showing exactly how knowledge translates directly into financial stability.
At its core, financial literacy is simply your ability to understand and effectively use financial skills, things like budgeting, saving, and investing, to actually accumulate wealth and navigate risk. And the research makes it crystal clear: lacking this fundamental knowledge is a massive barrier. Without it, individuals are way more prone to suboptimal behaviors, like inadequate saving and relying heavily on those high-interest, short-term debt traps we just looked at.
But here's the kicker. Financial literacy isn't distributed equally. The data reveals some stark, honestly pretty frustrating disparities. Who has the lowest financial literacy? Young adults under 30. Households with limited formal education. Folks in lower income brackets. There's even a documented gender gap, with men generally scoring higher than women. Do you notice a pattern here? The exact demographic groups that are most vulnerable to the economic squeeze and most heavily targeted by buy now, pay later apps are the exact same groups with the lowest access to the financial literacy needed to protect themselves.
Section 4. The Math of Wealth. Now, what's really interesting here is shifting our energy from the traps that take your money to the empowering mechanics of how you can actually build it. It all starts with understanding the fundamental difference between simple and compound interest. Simple interest is basic. You earn interest only on your original investment. But compound interest, which by the way has been studied since ancient Babylon, is where the real magic happens. It's interest accumulated on your principal sum and on the previously accumulated interest. It is literally your money making its own money.
Let's look at how this mathematical snowball effect plays out over time. Say you invest an initial $10,000 at a 15% return. At year 10, the compounding is just starting to gain traction, but by year 20, the growth is rapidly accelerating. And if you leave it for 40 years, that initial 10 grand, without adding another single dime, snowballs into $266,864. This proves right in front of us that even if you're starting with a small amount in a really tough economy, time and compounding are absolutely the most powerful levers you can pull.
To make this super practical for your own financial planning, I want to share a quick mental math shortcut that dates all the way back to Luca Pacioli in 1494. It's called the Rule of 72. If you want to know how long it will take your investment to double, simply divide the number 72 by your expected annual interest rate. So, if you get a 6% return, 72 divided by 6 is 12, meaning your money doubles every 12 years. It is a fantastic, incredibly easy tool to visualize your wealth building horizon.
Section 5. Building economic resilience.
We've looked at the historical hurdles, the modern debt traps, and the foundational math, but here